Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're getting our first impressions of the new releases from Bruce Dickinson, Firewind, and Ministry. So 3 releases that we're covering today, all pretty different in sound, right? Which is something we like.
When variety today.
Yeah, a release day with a good variety. So Ministry, Hopium for the Masses, which was supposed to drop last October, I think, or November. Got delayed.
I think it was, yeah.
Got delayed, and now it's finally out here on March 1st. TV Fish, you could take the floor. What did you think?
Well, this was my first time hearing Ministry.
Okay.
I've heard of this band many times, but I haven't listened to them myself. So, going in, like, this is my first impression. Like, I kind of sat there and thought, I'm like, okay, this sounds like King 810, but I know this band's old, so this band is probably a huge influence for King 810.
Yeah.
Similar style.
Fair, yeah.
And it's got, you know, I feel like some of it, or at least the first track, kind of reminded me a little bit of how the Offering's lyrical content of their most recent album was very, like, you know, socially and politically charged and was very direct. Mm-hmm. I noticed that with the first track here, and I'm like, you know, I kind of prefer with that if it's like spoken in metaphor, or at least done in a way that actually is like kind of a bit more interesting to think about and find the meaning inside, as opposed to it just being as direct.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more fun that way.
Yeah.
That was the only real song that felt like that to though. The rest of them, I started to think these sound kind of like industrial club mixes with these things in them, and I thought that was
essentially what they are.
And that is what these guys are. Like, these guys are, like, you know, one of the heavy hitters from that who've been around for so long, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are one of the influences of that sound.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But I was finding myself, like, enjoying grooves from this album. That was a pretty consistent note I was writing for these songs. Like, Goddamn White Trash, that has a neat groove. Just Stop Oil also has a neat groove. And that was kind of a general note that I made. Like, overall, decent, general industrial grooves, kind of liked them. And then there was a song, that last song, Ricky's Hand. It sounded a little bit more electronic, kind of like Skinny Puppy. Mm-hmm. Like that, which is weird because the rest of the album is more of like a new metal industrial kind of deal, right?
Definitely industrial, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the vibe, but yeah. Ricky's Hand, it sounded a lot different. I did like it.
Okay.
And it kind of just cut off. But it ends properly, but it does in a way that almost feels abrupt. So I remember when I heard that last track for the first time, I wasn't like directly in front of the speakers for it. So when I heard that, I'm like, did it just cut off? What the heck? So I went and then I listened to it again. I'm like, oh, okay, it doesn't, but like it totally sounded like it did.
Yeah.
But like overall, it wasn't like a great album for me. But there were some pretty good riffs in there. Like, it's an album that it's like I might listen to again, but it gets me interested on like what this band sounds like. Because I'm willing to assume for Ministry fans, this is probably not their best album. I'm just gonna guess that there's probably some like classic that they have.
Yeah.
And now I want to go listen to whatever like the best of this band is and really see like what they're really made of.
Yeah,
you know?
I own one Ministry album, and I don't know which one it is. I can't remember what it's called, because I bought it to check it out, and I guess at that time of my life, it didn't click with me, so it kind of went into my CD shelf, and I probably didn't play it much since then. So I don't really have a lot of exposure to this band. I've heard things here and there, and whatever, but I listened to this album twice today, and on my first listen, it was cringy. It's cringy. Like you mentioned, the lyrics being very direct and very kind of, they're kind of cringy. They're very just it's not well written lyrically, I don't find. You know, the first song, I believe, is about, you know, female bodily autonomy and things like that. Like, don't treat women like objects, right? Which is a great message, that's fine. But then the second song is Goddamn White Trash. Like, I felt like that was just a weird song title to have after the message of the first song. Just an odd thing. I don't know. By the time Just Stop Oil came on, I started to wonder, like, was this album co-written by Greta Thunberg or whatever that girl's name is? Like, just, it's very pushy in its political and social political messaging. And it is what it is. That's all good. Aryan Embarrassment is track 4. Like, so these first 4 tracks, basically, I'm looking at it like lyrically and thematically going, what the heck? Like, okay, so I think the song's about like basically the overall human embarrassment that Nazis exist in the first place. Like, how did we get to the point where we have fucking Nazis?
Yeah.
Right? So I get that, but calling the song Aryan Embarrassment, like there's Aryans in the world and they're not all Nazis. Like, you're not a Nazi just because you're Aryan. Like, that's, at least my understanding is not that. So I felt like it's a bit of a weird song title to have. But the song's got riffs, which means the song's got potential, right? So you gotta play this game where you're looking at, do I sacrifice the lyrics for the music, or do I say, nah, the lyrics are too cringy and I gotta do out with the music, right? I found that I can do fine with the lyrics. They're not that bad. I mean, they're a little bit, I don't know, amateur, maybe? I don't know. It's hard to really put a word to it. But I think the songs have a good enough drive to them, and the riffs are chunky enough, and there's some hype and bounce that they're enjoyable enough. So overall, I didn't love it. It definitely grew on me on my second listen. I think there's some potential there. Track number 5 was also a decent one. I'm just naming the first 5 tracks, basically. But yeah, there's some stuff there, man. I just wish it was a little bit more mature sounding, maybe? I don't know. And again, maybe they sound like this all the time, but I don't think so. I think if you go back and listen to older stuff, it will sound a little bit more metaphorical, a little bit more mature, and less angsty, I guess. So,
well, moving on, let's talk about Stand United by Firewind.
Okay.
This is a band I haven't listened to in a long time. I think they dropped an album a few years ago, and I did listen to it like once, but I didn't remember what it sounded like. And when I was first getting into a lot of prog stuff, I was listening to some of this band's albums from like the 2000s or so, and I really liked those. So I came into this thinking this is a prog record. It wasn't what I thought it was, but I still enjoyed it anyway.
Okay.
And I feel like I was reminded of a lot of different bands here. I was reminded of a tiny bit of Dream Theater. I was reminded of Angra. I was reminded of a little bit of almost even Saxon, to be honest, with some of it. I will mention, I guess first, is the title track. It's thrashier, I enjoyed it, and then the bridge comes in with the double kick, and I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. And then with the solo right afterwards, which is a sick, killer solo. But I'll say that about this album as a whole. The solos are killer. I enjoyed them all quite a bit, but that one on the title track definitely hit different. Another mini solo thing here is that there's like a mini guitar solo after the first chorus into the second verse of Destiny's Calling. That was pretty cool. And a lot of the time, like, my notes are just like, oh, this is an awesome bridge riff before the solo, or like, this is a cool bridge riff. The vocals are powerful. It's kind of like a less technical Angra is kind of what this album felt like to me.
Okay.
It kind of has like the power metal influence.
It has power metal vibes in there for sure.
It's not super progressive though.
No.
It's not overly technical. They're not doing too much other genre stuff really, like Angra would. Just overall, like a note that I wrote is just this album is kick-ass. Like Land of Chaos is another one with a filthy bridge riff. Like it stopped kind of wowing me generally in the second half of the album, but overall, like I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was a really fun album to listen to.
It's interesting hearing you speak about it. So just overall, I enjoyed it quite a bit too. I thought this was a fun album. But you listed off a few bands that it reminded you of, and I'm actually like shocked that you didn't list the band that it reminded me of. Disturbed. Wow. Okay.
Really Disturbed.
A lot of Disturbed, but a certain kind of Disturbed. And this is gonna sound mean, but if you took all of Disturbed's worst songs, sprinkled a little bit of Sabaton into them, this is what you get.
I can kind of see it with Sabaton. I can kind of see the Sabaton comparison.
The vocalist sounds like David Draymond. In cadence, so much. The way he enunciates his words, the way he phrases his lyrics, it's David Draymond a lot. Now, David Draymond does this thing where he puts ends in words that don't have them. And I can't even think of an example, but the way he pronounces a word, you'll hear an N sound in there when there's not really an N sound. He does it all the time. I just suck to think of examples. This guy does that too. I thought it might be like, oh, maybe they're from the same place. Pretty sure David Draymond's American. This band's from Greece. So, nope. Anyways, yeah, you mentioned a couple of the songs that I liked as well. The title track is great. Destiny is Calling is good. Land of Chaos was also pretty good. Land of Chaos is actually the song I think that stands out the most because it has more double bass going throughout the song. It gives it more of a heavier feel. But overall, the solos and the riffs on this album are really enjoyable and really good. And I don't want to say it sounds like Disturbed is a bad thing either, because I like Disturbed. I've always been a fan. So I'm not saying that like it's a knock. It's just I can't believe you didn't draw the same comparison.
No, I didn't.
I can't believe that. Also worth noting, I'm just not sure if you knew this, but track number 9 is a cover. Talking in Your Sleep is a cover by the Romantics.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so, and I thought that was cool. And the thing that I found funny about that is it sounds like the kind of cover Disturbed would do. So, overall though, a good album. It was pretty much my introduction to this band. I didn't know much about them. I've never really listened to them before, maybe a track here or there. But yeah, it was not bad, pretty good. It's 10 tracks, 43 minutes, so good length, good number of songs. They kind of hit that sweet spot there. And yeah, overall pretty good. Just reminded me a lot of Disturbed.
All right, fair enough. Well, moving on. Bruce Dickinson.
The Mandrake Project.
Mandrake Project solo album. And it's funny you mentioned that, you know, Firewind is from Greece, because this album art from the Mandrake Project is a good example of like why so many people are using Greek letters that look like English letters to try to like look cool.
So stylized.
So like every time they use what looks like the triangle, that is the letter delta, which is a D. It's a capital D. So this would read as the Mandrake Project. Like if you're like, it annoys me seeing that, just like that's not how that works. And I think with every E they use a sigma, which is a capital S. So
it makes fucking it all up.
It makes even less sense. If you look at it just from the visual, it's like, yeah, the Mandrake Project. But if you actually read the Greek letters that are in there,
it makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. It's low-key a pet peeve of mine when people do that. Anyway, let's talk about how the album sounds. I like that a lot of these tracks, to me, did not sound like Iron Maiden. And I was hoping for that. I've only heard one solo Bruce Dickinson song before listening to this album. That was Tears of the Dragon. Not the Zelda side quest, or I guess main quest. But
okay.
Tears of the Dragon is the only song I heard. I remember it being a softer song, but that was it. I hadn't heard anything since then. And I heard that song like 10 or so years ago. I know the song's a lot older than that, but that's when I heard it. So I'm glad that I went into this and I'm like, wow, so there's some action going on in this. It's not all softer, because that was my only impression of it. So it's like Afterglow of Ragnarok. I like that it sounds more like a classic heavy metal kind of thing, kind of like Black Sabbath almost, like that kind of pocket of heavy metal. I like that that's the direction that song went. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. With Bruce Dickinson's voice on it. There was, yeah, in Many Doors to Hell, the pre-chorus and chorus, that sounded a little bit more like modern Iron Maiden to me. Like modern, like, you know, past few albums.
Yep.
But it's not like the album's full of that. I found some interesting stuff on it. There was another song that I really liked, Rain on the Graves. I feel like that had a really mean sound, and Bruce's singing in the verses kind of sounded like talk singing, and I thought that was really cool and unique. I haven't heard him sing like that, so I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool and unique, and I liked the riff, so it was able to work out for me that way. Yeah, I thought that was cool. Resurrection Men was another pretty cool one. Kind of starts like this country song, like Wild West kind of sound, which I thought was pretty cool. Also had some bongos there in the background during the intro. That was a neat track.
Country bongos.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Country bongos.
So, there was a track on this album called Eternity Has Failed. And when I saw that before I got to it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because the first track on the Book of Souls is If Eternity Should Fail. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then the song started, and I thought, oh my god, this is a sequel to If Eternity Should Fail. Starts exactly the same, but the instrumentation is different. Like, they use an actual, like, flute in the start instead of a synthesizer. But it's like, as the intro starts, I'm singing along to a song that I'm hearing for the first time ever. And that's weird, because the intro lyrics, or most of the lyrics in the song, are the same as If Eternity Should Fail. So I'm singing along to this intro because I'm like, I know this. I've heard this before 9 years ago when they dropped the Book of Souls. So this song it's a sequel, and the lyrics are slightly different, but it's essentially a slightly shorter but also slower version of If Eternity Should Fail. Yeah. And I love that song too, amazing song. So I was kind of like, it feels weird that it's almost the same song, but it's a sequel or maybe successor to a song I know I enjoy. The way I kind of see it, it's kind of similar to The Unforgiven and The Unforgiven 2. Like, The Unforgiven is the song, and then Unforgiven 2 kind of feels like a cover of the first one, like in a different
sequel.
Yeah, in a different style, and the lyrics are a little bit different.
Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2.
Kind of, but I get Evil Dead 2 is pretty different in some aspects, though.
It is, yeah.
But, yeah, so it's like, I didn't know exactly how I really felt about that, because I'm like, well, there's something really cool about it, but there's something really kind of just like, almost even unoriginal about it, because there's so much that's similar to the original. But, I mean, I didn't hate it. There was one issue I kind of found near the end of the album, and that was having Face in the Mirror into Shadow of the Gods, which is essentially ballad into like half ballad. Like, you get a ballad, which is Face in the Mirror, and then the first half of Shadow of the Gods is like slow. So to have a ballad into a song that's also like starts slow for a while.
It's not the best track placement.
It's not the best track placement. I like Shadow of the Gods more, but And then the last track, I think is a pretty good closer. Cool solo. I like it's like a slow emotional burn, but I don't think, like, I'd either reposition one of the two songs before it or remove one of the two songs before it. That's what I would do.
Yeah. So just to, I guess, I don't know. I overall, I thought this was kind of boring. Okay. I like Iron Maiden. It's not my first time listening to Bruce Dickinson. It's not my first time being unimpressed with Bruce Dickinson's solo stuff. I think the main reason is because Bruce Dickinson's stuff to me sounds like Iron Maiden's worst stuff. That's kind of how I put it. I also have this feeling, this opinion, that if you're gonna be a vocalist of a band, and you can be another member too, but this is more specific to vocalists, and you're gonna branch off and do a solo project, you have to try to do something to make it sound more different. Because this to me just sounds like bad Iron Maiden. Not bad, but the worst of Iron Maiden. And the fact that they essentially used and rewrote an Iron Maiden song and put it on this album is kind of a testament to that. Now, it's a good Iron Maiden song, and it's good on here too, but for me, it would probably take several listens to grow on me, right? I do agree with your point about the ballad and then Shadow of the Gods. However, I do think Shadow of the Gods is maybe the strongest song on this album, at least on my first impression. And it's because it picks up in the second half. The first half I didn't really like too much because a ballad just came before, and I was like, oh, more of this, like more soft stuff, like what the F are you doing? But then it picks up in the second half, and you get this really nice old school metal riff, and Bruce starts getting a little more aggressive on the vocals, and it just gets more feel good, right? So I really like that, I appreciate that. You mentioned Rain on the Graves, and some stuff you liked about that. I thought this song was bad. I thought this was a bad song, and I'm listening like, who approved this? But it goes two different ways though, because you're right, he's doing different stuff vocally. He's got some weird talking parts, and he's doing a little bit of different singing styles. So it gets points for that. I can't deny that. That's what I'm asking for, is something that sounds different. But this is not it. For me, this was not it. It was not executed well. And I don't even know if multiple listens can save this song for me. Eternity Has Failed. So you already talked a bunch about it and how it compares to Book of Souls counterpart. The lyric, when the world was virgin before the coming of man. I took that two different ways. Like one, the world was pure before humans arrived.
Yeah.
Or the world got fucked when humans evolved. It could be either way. I thought it was a clever lyric. I thought it was a clever lyric that could be kind of taken different ways.
And I believe it's from 9 years ago.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, overall, I was not really that impressed by the album. But, I mean, it's really hard to... We're not judging it right now. This is not a review, right? So, like anything, you listen to it more, it could grow on you. You can listen to it more, and it could piss you the fuck off. Either way, we've decided this week we're not going to review either of these albums because we don't think either of them are really worthy. We're not really that interested in either of the 3 albums. So we're going to take a free week, listen to a bunch of random stuff. So in the meantime, you guys can leave your comments down below and let us know what you guys thought of these 3 releases. And also give us some suggestions of things to check out this week because we're going to be listening to lots of stuff. So for now, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you liked it. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
I'll see you guys on the next one.